Yeah, so as I say, this seminar is about building relationships across cultures, and welcome to you all. We've got about 40 minutes. We're going to have about half an hour of conversation and storytelling with Tony and Linda. Then there'll be time at the end for questions. If you think of questions as we go along, then do post those in the chat. I'll let Tony and Linda introduce themselves, but they're both part of Hope Church in Luton, and this is a really practical seminar. They're grappling with issues of building a church that truly connects people from different cultures and backgrounds, so I'm sure we're going to get an awful lot from it. So without any further ado, over to you, Tony and Linda. Thank you so much.
So if I just quickly introduce myself, and then Linda can do herself. So I lead the church in Luton. I, with a number of others, started it about 17, 18 years ago. Luton is my hometown, but I became a Christian after I'd left, and then came back to plant a church, and have learned an awful lot in doing it, mostly by my mistakes, but love serving in Luton, which is very multicultural. Over to you, Linda.
Hi everyone, I'm Linda and I'm also one of the leaders at Hope Church in Luton. I have been there 18 years. I joined the church plant in 2002. I got saved from a nominal Christian family. We were very strongly Hindu background, and I guess for me, my journey has been growing up mostly in the New Frontiers Church. It's just been one of realizing that church is multicultural and that I'm not just the odd one out trying to fit in, but actually diversity and being one and different is part of God's plan. So I'm a teacher as well as someone who works for the church. So today I spent the day teaching, and now I'm here to spend some time with you guys.
Linda is, for those who know her, she is a great communicator. It's great working with her, and it's great having Harvey with us. And I'm sure when we get to questions and answers, he'll be far more effective at answering questions than Linda and I. And I really enjoyed what you shared, Harvey. Yeah. And in essence, you've set the scene very well for us. Just to start with, this is a quote that I picked up from the Times newspaper in the UK, probably about 10 years or so ago. But the fact it was from a secular newspaper made it particularly stand out for me. For the vast majority of people in the UK today, the church is an alien culture and Christianity is a foreign language. And that's not just talking about immigrants or Muslims or anything else. I just think there's a real truth that the church is an alien culture. Christianity is a foreign language to most people in the UK. Whether they're white British or whether they're Asian or African or whatever, the cultural divide between the church and the world is big. And therefore, we've got to learn to communicate cross-culturally, because if we don't, we're only going to be talking to ourselves, and the church will continue to decline. And so we need to learn and listen to people from other cultures. And too often, I think we're so intent on telling people what we believe that we're not stopping to listen and hearing where they're coming from, and so understand how what we believe can be applied to what their situation is. And so what I want to do just for a little while, for Linda and I talk differently, is about understanding the perspective of minorities in our nation and in other nations. And it's great to have people from different ethnicities here, but the majority of people in our churches in the UK are from white middle-class backgrounds. And the perspective of many people outside of the church is that Christianity is a white man's religion, and not just a white man's religion, but a white middle-class man's religion. And that was how I felt. So when I became a Christian from an unchurched background, my instinct was that church was for those who've been brought up in it, and it had nothing to do with me and had nothing relevant to me. And the only reason I became a Christian was I started arguing with Christians to prove them wrong. To my shock and horror, came to the conclusion that they were right and I was wrong. But I found it, even for myself from a working class background, I found it a massive cultural jump to be able to get involved. And I felt that people felt I was a bit of an outsider. But on the whole, I think the separation in many cultures, but particularly in the UK and the States, of separation between white and black churches doesn't help. And so if we're in a predominantly white church, people who are not white don't think it's relevant for them. And then when you have some of the overtly racist things that are coming out of white churches, particularly in the States, but not just in the States, it adds to that sense for loads of people thinking that there's a barrier between them and us before we've even started. And people, if you listen to them, and it takes a while because they've got to trust you to start with, but to start talking about prejudices they've experienced, the hurts that they've experienced, whether they're real or imagined, but from their perspective, they feel that they've experienced prejudice by white people, and white people they see as representing the church. And that therefore there is a massive barrier for people to cross over into a predominantly white church as they perceive it. They can feel that they are rejecting their heritage, even if it's a Christian heritage, of actually going over to the enemy of the people that have persecuted them and prejudiced against them, and they would find family pressures not to do that. They would feel uncertain about whether they were welcome or not. And I know in the early days, we had the first few people who were non-white amongst us. It was a real battle for them to stay and think that they were welcome. So I think we're going to be kicked out and have to come back again in a minute.
I don't think so.
All right.
It asked me if we wanted to close the room, and I said no. So hopefully we'll be okay.
All right. So there's some thoughts for myself. Linda, do you want to talk representing from an ethnic minority background?
I can share some of my own experiences. Obviously, these are not the experiences of everyone, but what it might do is help us to look at things from other perspectives and not just view things from our own perspective. Be aware that people might experience the same thing as you, but view it from a very different point and a very different experience. So I'll just share one thing that happened at Christmas time. So be aware that people, unless they trust you, which is the same for all of us, we won't really be honest about how we're feeling and how things are impacting us. Why? Because it makes us vulnerable. There's shame involved in saying, people's talking about me like this, people are speaking about Asian people like this, and it impacts my heart, or they're speaking about Black people like this, and it's identity, and it hits at the core of who we are. So and the most important thing for all of us, you and I, it's to build relationship, friendship with one another. Tony and I, it's taken a good 18 years of friendship for us to work and relate the way we do. And at Christmas time, I'm not sure how many of you actually saw the Sainsbury's ad, the first of 3 Sainsbury's ads that came out of an all Black British family having Christmas dinner together. I watched it and I loved it. And then within a few days, I realized it had caused a big raucous. And I just want to read one quote. There were several horrific quotes about this Sainsbury's ad, but this is one quote. And I'd like you to imagine that this quote is speaking about your family, because what it's speaking about is this Black British family, and it's pretty horrendous. But for most of us, it can just go over our head and we don't realize it. So I'm only going to read one out of several horrific quotes. This is what someone said about the Sainsbury's ad. That family is disgusting, it's disgraceful, and it's shameful. Now, it really impacted me when I saw that ad, when I read those quotes, because that family was my family growing up. That family is not disgusting, it's not shameful, and it's not disgraceful. It's my family. And I remember Tony and I were having a conversation, and I said to him, Tony, have you seen that Sainsbury's ad? And I'm throwing Tony in it, but he knows we've got a relationship where we're very real. And he said, do you mean the controversial ad? And I said, that advert is not controversial. That advert is a family like mine. There is nothing controversial about that advert. That family is like many of our families in our churches. And if we haven't got relationship with them, trust me, if I didn't trust Tony to be able to say to him, that ad is not controversial, that ad is my family, and these words are painful, then there are going to be a lot of hurting people in our churches, a lot of hurting people who will never dare to tell you the truth, because they don't think you'll understand, and they don't think you'll be able to see it from their perspective. And they have to know they're loved, and they have to know that it's a safe place for them to be able to share from the vulnerability of the shame of those kind of words, racism. And I have to say that there were several other people that I spoke to in our church from ethnic backgrounds who were really broken by some of the comments that were written about that Sainsbury's ad. There were 3 ads, and it was just so happened that the first one was an all-Black British family. The others represented other families. But the reaction it caused from a minority of people was incredibly painful. The biggest barrier that we will all have working with people from different cultural backgrounds is to be real, to have real conversations about things like racism, things like what multiculturalism looks like. And Tony and I and our leadership team have had those conversations. We are not a multicultural church when we have lots of different nationalities sitting on seats and leadership from one demographic and one ethnic group. That's not multicultural. Multicultural is when we accept and release people from all nationalities and all races into all levels of leadership. And we have got to be open to the fact that people lead in different ways. I hate doing things like this. I hate it. It's not what I enjoy, and I really do not enjoy doing it. But I have people like Tony and people like Adrian, who's on here, who encourage me and release me and see the gifting and potential in me. I'm not disqualified because I'm of an Asian background, and I'm not disqualified because I'm a single woman. And that's what we need to do. Whether we have children of our own or not, we are called to father and mother others in our church. And the challenge is to not just choose people like us, but to choose those on the margins that people talked about, that you see potential in, and then release them to be all they're called to be. It's too easy to just disciple people that are similar to us. It would be too easy for me to just choose to input into the lives of other single women. There are many others older than me and younger than me who need spiritual mothering from someone like me. And the same is true for all of us. But the challenge is to build with people who are different, to have that relationship of love and trust so that there's space to have the awkward conversations. Go on, Tony. I can see you're nodding.
Well, I just think, so it just brings us on to the fact that when I said it was a controversial ad, I was totally unaware that that could have been hurtful to Linda. And I thought I was just making a statement.
Yeah.
But the reality was actually for her, and as you can tell, I can do this seminar and it doesn't impact me in terms of my feeling in the depth. But for Linda, it's real raw stuff. And it's costly for her to talk about these things in a way it's not for me. And so for me, it's very easy just to be careless with my words, like saying it's a controversial ad. And I need a depth of friendship with someone like Linda, who can actually say, if you say that, actually that's hurtful because it's so raw. And how can I build effectively with people outside of the church with different cultural backgrounds if I'm unaware of all these things that are going on? And so I just find it has been such a joy and so essential to build a friendship and work in team with someone like Linda, because I need it. So the other example which I share, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, the guy who murdered George Floyd has just been not sentenced, but yeah, anyway, it has been recognised. The jury's found him guilty. That's the thing. But over a year ago, when the death of George Floyd happened, it happened midweek, and I knew about it, but I didn't think too much about it. Really, I hadn't picked up how significant it was. But then on Monday, I had Linda on the phone to me in floods of tears and was shocked because she couldn't believe it that I hadn't mentioned it on Sunday. And she hadn't even thought to mention it because she thought and knew that I was sensitive to these things and just expected me to do it. And the fact that I didn't devastated her. Now, the truth of it is, I don't know of any other white pastors who did anything that first Sunday. I know loads and loads of black pastors who did something on that Sunday because they immediately and intuitively knew how significant it was. For myself and other white pastors, it took us another week to be able to respond and do something. And I think that just demonstrates the deep separation that there is and that need for us to be learning and building together. Now, as a consequence of that, and really guided and helped by Linda, we were able to do a more appropriate response, and one that's been over a period of time. But it also, the other thing that I was able to do, I'm part of the Churches Together executive in Luton, and we had a session on out of the George Floyd situation where black pastors there talked about it, white pastors did. What I was able to do was actually talk real and talk about actually I am culpable, and talk about my prejudice and the prejudice that I came from and how I was culpable for what happened. And I thought that other white people were culpable, and to cut through all the rhetoric and just ask for forgiveness from the black pastors, and to just say how sorry I was for my part in that and what happened. And it was amazing what it broke. And out of that, myself and another one of the black pastors have been working together. We've convened gatherings of white and black pastors to talk about these things. And we're setting up a commission of different people from different backgrounds of actually how we can, as black and white church leaders, Asian church leaders, African Caribbean church leaders, work together. But I was able to do that because Linda had shown me those things. And by her honesty and the cost of her telling me how she felt has helped me grow in that. And I honestly don't believe that we can reach out and impact people outside the church of different cultures if we aren't learning from trusted people within the church who are fellow Christians, who love us and know us, who can help us understand where other people are coming from. That's me now drawing for breath. Over to you, Linda.
And I think that's the challenge. The challenge is to build friendships out of where we feel comfortable. And the reality is Tony and his wife Anne are good friends of mine, which is why I am real with them, which is why I will tell them as it is. And we as churches need to build, all of us, whatever our ethnic background, need to build with people that are from other ethnicities and other classes to us. Why? Because that is the calling of the church. Diverse, created, different, and yet one. That's powerful. It's powerful to our Muslim friends when they see Tony and I and the real friendship we have, and the fact that my opinion and my voice is heard with him. There's something powerful with our Muslim friends. Rahana and Sujil, they realize that I am not just a token Asian person in Tony's leadership team. And for them, that's important. They see people of their own ethnicity, a different religion to them, I am, but honored and valued. And it does something in their heart. It's almost given them more favor with Tony because they realize he isn't just saying it for token. It's not just about a Sunday morning, oh, hi, it's lovely to see you. We know each other. And I will say to Tony if I don't agree. Don't I, Tony? Even if exactly, but that's what is beautiful about the kingdom of God. The fact is, he doesn't call us to live comfortably. It's about counting a cost, building outside of our comfort zones, outside of our own ethnicities, and learning to love and serve from that place of real relationship. And it needs to go deeper than the surface. It needs to be more than, oh yeah, we're good friends, we see each other every Sunday morning. It needs to be doing real life, and it's far too easy to do real life with other middle class, same ethnic group as us people. And I think God is shaking that up, because if we want to reach people who are unreached, we need to start by building with people who are different within our church. I want to share one story about after the Manchester bombings. I can't remember what year that was. It was in quite a number of years ago. Tony was away, as were several of the elders, and I just happened to be one of the leadership team that Sunday at church. I remember that morning because I was anchoring and preaching that morning. And before the service started, I had 3 members of our congregation who I know and love, who I know love me, come up to me at different times before the service started in a panic. And they said to me, Linda, why do we let foreigners into this country? The first time I was shocked. By the 3rd time, I didn't think I was going to be able to stand up and preach. I genuinely thought, God, what are you doing? I don't know. And I remember it took me years afterwards to be able to even share it with Tony and the leadership team, because it was painful. But we have got to have our eyes open, because we are even unaware of racism in the church, because people who experience it won't say it unless they trust you enough to know you will hold them through it. And I'm not sure why I'm crying with that, because I'm over that now. But when you share it in this context, it is vulnerable, because for those of us of ethnic minorities, it's not often a one-off. It's something we live with, and to speak it out is actually really difficult, because church is our safe place. And yet it isn't always. And you've got to be aware of that, and you've got to have relationship to be able to walk, not just leaders like me who can walk through that. But I was thinking, if those 3 different people who know and love me had shared those comments with less mature Christians of ethnic minority, I think they would have walked away from church, because I battled to stand up there and preach that Sunday and love the church that Sunday and choose to be involved in church that Sunday. But I can only imagine what someone who wasn't in leadership, who hadn't walked with Jesus for about 15 years, would have coped with that situation. And we have got to have relationships where we can have this kind of discourse with others and listen to each other's stories, forgive each other our mistakes. Those families come round to my house for dinner and we've got good friendship. But there was something that's just powerful in having that depth in friendship where you can share it and say it. Tony, what time up?
That's right. I was just thinking it's coming up to 1:30 now, so I was just wondering whether now will be a good time to stop, David, and to give an opportunity for questions. I know both you and I could talk for another half an hour without any problems at all.
Thanks so much, Linda and Tony. It's just so powerful, and I know as a white pastor myself, we're going through some painful learning, and just want to say to all friends from other cultures, I'm just really sorry for the way that white pastors in the UK have so often failed to listen and reach out and empathize with you. And I know how costly it is for some of my black friends in Newcastle even to talk about these things. And I just so appreciate the tremendous patience that people from other cultures in our churches have shown towards us. And it's so good to be on this journey together, so thank you. Yeah, we do have time for questions, and I think I can see you all. So if you have a question for Linda or Tony or both, and if you want to wave, and I'll just...
Yeah, it's just a question for Linda, really, because I was thinking, you know, the three people that came up to you that Sunday. I imagine if someone had asked them, "Are you racist?" they'd said, "Of course not," right? But then their question illustrates that they are, and it made me think, my goodness, I wonder to what extent we're racist, you know, speaking as a white person, and unaware of it. And so then my question was, well, what's a good audit to kind of bring that to the fore and to like lead us into repentance? Maybe you've got some ideas.
I think we all have prejudice, myself included. We all have prejudice in some area or other, and I think it is about being open to the Holy Spirit. I never actually challenged any of those three people, but what I do know is a year or so later, Tony did a series, and one topic in the series was about racism. And one of the women who came up to me that day actually said to Tony, "You shouldn't be preaching on this. We are not racist." And she felt like he was putting something on the church, and she left the church. Now, that was the first time I ever spoke to Tony and said, actually, can I share a story that happened after the Manchester bombing? So I thought that was interesting. What I don't think is, this isn't about a guilt trip. This is about us journeying together. I don't think white pastors need to feel guilty about, you know, I just don't think that's what this is about. I think it's about unity. I think it's about relationship. My challenge to you, my challenge to those, to provoke those in your congregations that you may see racism in or whatever it is, are they building with people from other ethnicities? Because that is pleasing to the heart of God. Build those friendships, model it as church leaders, model it as small group leaders. Let's not just be talking the talk, let's live it. Let's live what we believe, which is having people from other ethnicities into our homes, going over to theirs, learning that, you know, some cultures don't use babysitters. That's okay. It's not something to poo-poo or look down on. Go to their homes. enjoy their children. Like we've had to challenge some of our church who are like, none of our this ethnicity come to any of our small groups because of their children. So what? That's their cultural okay, that's their norm. We can't expect everyone to have babysitters just because that's our Western norm. Let's try and accommodate different cultures. So my challenge is, I don't think it's about going around telling people they're racist or kind of antagonizing. I think it's encouraging one another to build outside of our ethnic group, to build outside of our class, or what, you know, build with people who are different.
Yeah, I think I have a role, because it's actually costly for Linda in a way it's not for me. And so that's why I need to take responsibility as the church leader. And as Linda said, as I've grown and seen these things, I've preached about it much more. And every time I preach about it, the white people say, why are you preaching about this? We don't need to hear it. The people from ethnic minorities say, thank you, Tony, you understand. And I just have to keep preaching it, because prejudice is so deep. And I was saying in a breakout room to Dave Nunn, one of the things that really winds me up these days is church leaders boast about how many different cultures, how many different ethnicities there are in their congregation. But actually, it's not about how many ethnicities you've got in the congregation, is what is the relationship that's being built. And to me, I don't want to be judgmental, but sometimes you've just got to say it as it is, that people want to have all these different ethnicities, but there's no crisscrossing about them. They only meet in with their own ethnicities. And the number of people from other nations who come to Hope, who've been in multicultural churches, who then tell me they've never been to a white person's house for a meal. And that it's almost segregated within the church, rather than building real friendships and relationships. And don't forget, the purpose of doing all of this is not that we become multicultural churches, but it's so that we can reach out to the cultures beyond us. And if we can't actually build relationships and build a church that values people from different backgrounds and different ethnicities, how on earth do we expect to reach out to people who are different than us outside the church? They might meet Christ and they come into our church and they'll run a mile. And the thought of someone, someone who meets with Jesus, then coming in, and then one of my congregation telling them, "What are you doing here? Go back to your own nation."
So why do we let foreigners into our country? I just wanted to check if they needed glasses that day. I was thinking, oh my gosh.
But this is why I feel so passionate about it. How are we going to re-evangelize our nation? And we send people all over the world to do that, and actually are blind to what's happening here.
Actually, it's more a comment. I think one of the things that we have as church leaders, a responsibility, is actually to help the cultures talk to one another, because people don't know how to talk across the cultures. One of the things that we did in the middle of London was we spent several evenings where we'd sit round tables and we'd place people that was all the different cultures we had, and we would ask questions like, how do you spend birthdays? What do marriages look like? How do you cope with death? What are the ceremonies around it? What did you do? What games did you play as a child? And it allowed people, no one sort of had to explain why, they just had to explain what they did. And that allowed the conversations to begin. The other thing that I think is really crucial is cooking. Is actually getting cultures to learn how to cook one another's foods, and to do it in multicultural groups where you can go to someone's home, they do the meal, you understand why their tastes are different, and why actually roast beef to them, roast dinner just is tasteless. Whereas to us it's the best. And I think we have a responsibility to help the cultures talk together, because as Tony said, too many churches have lots of cultures, but they don't know how to talk to one another. That's just an observation and comment.
Thank you, Dave. That's so good. Harvey, it is so good to have you with us. Is there anything you would like to share at this point?
Just enjoying this. This is a very good conversation. Linda, thank you. Tony, Dev, this is brilliant. This is a deep question, right? How do we make this work? How do we allow the cultures to not only exist together but enjoy worshiping together, right? And the greatest challenge for many is negotiating the power differentials in the cultures, right? How do we do power in a congregation of people from different parts of the world? How do we share power in ways that actually show our congregations that we are equals, starting with leadership, and then everybody is that we are equal. This is going to be where this stands or falls, whether we can understand one another and appreciate one another to be equal in our congregations. That involves some people letting go of their power. That involves some people really appreciating that God has empowered us for them for something. But how do we do power? Is the main question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's so helpful. I see there are some more questions. Linda and Tony, do you want to answer that great question? Not the easiest to answer, but do you want to reflect back on what Harvey's saying, but just before we get further questions?
I totally agree, and I'm aware of how wrong I've got it over the years, and even now it works. So in the work that I'm doing with other Black pastors, and Linda is great because she always is what you say is out at the excess of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so she pulls me up always in terms of what I'm saying, in a helpful way, in a way I appreciate. But working with other Black pastors, the instinct is for me to take the lead, and from both sides, that the temptation is for me to do it and for them to allow me to do it. And I have to work really hard not to refuse to do it. And even within our leadership team, of actually making sure that those who are the minorities, who are naturally disempowered, that I create space and empower them. Now, you could say that I've done too good a job with Linda, so that now there's no inhibitions. But actually, Linda, she's like a daughter to me, and seeing God use her and how powerful she is. But actually, she should admit to you, I've had to work really hard to encourage, exhort. Even now, Linda would have done anything other than to be here this evening. And every time, and I know that God wants to use her, and she's got a voice that needs to be heard, and she's not speaking on her own behalf, she's speaking on behalf of other ethnic minorities, she's speaking about Asians, she's speaking on behalf of women, and she needs to do it. But I need to empower her and release her to do that. And I know that my role is to become lesser and to allow other people to come forward. And so I think the role of white pastors is create space for others to speak forward. And so it's a joy to me, the fact that Linda is able to articulate things in the way that I can't. And so I just think Harvey's absolutely right. And as white people with a natural, there is white supremacy. We have got white advantage. We need to use that to lift and empower others, so that they become more and we become less.
Linda, do you want to comment?
I think Tony's, in a sense, one of the things Tony has done with me is I am very different from our usual preaching list, and I don't like it because I don't see my style as following everyone else's. I very much storytell. I cry if I want to cry. I may stop and get a soul to just wait on the Holy Spirit. I'm just very different from a lot of the rest of our more exposition type preachers. And Tony has been, like he said, he has encouraged me, been a real father to me in this, and refused to let me come off. He said he's got a list of people who want to come on that preaching rota, and he won't take me off to put them on, no matter how much I beg. But I find that's fathering me well, because what I want is to come off. What he wants is what's best for me, not what is easiest for me. And I think that's what we've got to, each person is different. I can't speak for everyone who's of Asian background or every woman or any, but I can say that people of ethnic minorities have got more barriers to in our multicultural churches, especially New Frontiers churches, to step up into leadership. Yes. And so you have got to really support, encourage, and just give them opportunity, even when they are different, even when they are not what your church is used to. God uses all of us in different ways.
Yeah, sure. Can people hear me?
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing, Linda, and I really appreciate this time. Yeah, just hearing. I do have a question for Linda. So where I'm at is I'm at a church where majority's white, I'll say, and I'm the only single Black brother in church. So it's challenging, and I can see a sense of wearisome coming over because there's a part of me which I find it very difficult to share. You know, just my experience as a Black man in the UK, and there's a wariness. I can see myself. I've been disengaged from parts of church because I'm just feeling. I feel like people don't really get me, and I don't expect people to get me, if I'm being honest. So I guess the question is, you know, how to fight against apathy, how to fight against weariness, because I am grateful for the church. The church has been really good to me, very loving, but it can be just challenging, you know, your things that's gone through, things that you experience in the week that is of that has a racial influence or a perspective that is not shared by the majority of the church, or the majority of the church doesn't experience. It gets it's tough. It gets boring, gets wearisome. There's apathy. So I guess the question is how to fight against that. And I can't blame. It's not the church's fault. I'm not here to blame the church, but it can be challenging.
Yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer to that. I think that part of the refining fire is just walking through what we walk through. But I do think, Sam, it's important. Just look at the screen of faces here. They don't know you, but we are a family because we love Jesus together. And actually, it's important that you feel in your safe places that you can share your stories. It's important, one, because otherwise people like Tony are oblivious to the fact it's happening. And two, and also if you can break some ground in breaking the silence that many of us have had for years, then it's breaking ground for others to run into something that's a bit easier. And I think pioneering something, breaking ground in something is always harder work. But I do believe that there is something that God does in us when we don't give up. There have been times when I've wanted to wash my hands of the church because of situations like the why do we let foreigners in, or, you know, just little things like that. And I just think, gosh, God, I love these people, and yet, do I really belong? Is this really where you want me? And the reality is, yes, he does. Because if you're not there, and if you're not speaking up, and if you're not building real friendship and sharing, then actually others aren't going to know, and the family needs to know, because when one part of the body hurts, the body hurts. And that's the reality. Even if the head is unaware that the little finger is in pain, it will at some point realize it. And we are a body. And the reality is, when you and I hurt, Tony hurts. He might not fully realize it, but we are family and a body. And so, I'm sorry, Tony, I'm using you because I know you. But do you see, Sam, I don't think there's an easy thing, but I think you have the people around you, you trust, that you need to start using your voice, because in a loving way. And I think as people share more, it brings things to light. It brings stories that others are unaware of into the light. So no easy
Thank you so
answer.
much, Linda. I think we're going to be cut off any second. So can I just say massive thanks to Linda and Tony, to Harvey, to everybody who's contributed. Just an outstanding time, just so helpful. And the recording will be available for us all to listen again. But thank you so much, everybody. I think any second now we'll be summoned back to the main meeting.